Welcome to Beautifully Consumed. I'm Chelsea Leigh, owner of Chelsea Leigh Jewelry and your host. I'm just a girl that decided to go for it, and now I'm a successful business owner. But there's more to life than business, and that's why I found myself on a mission to love and become my most true self. I'm so excited to have this podcast as a space where we can do that together. You're in the right place if you're ready to be wildly dedicated to finding your purpose, becoming your most true self, and learning what it means to be beautifully consumed by living a life that is undeniably yours. Hello, and welcome to the very first episode of Beautifully Consumed. I am your host, Chelsea Leigh, or you can call me Chelsea, whatever you prefer. Either way, I am just so happy and excited to have you here. Before we get into the episode, I want to let you know that all of these episodes will be posted in video format over on my YouTube channel. So if you're interested in watching instead of listening, head on down to the show notes where you can get the link for my YouTube channel. All right, in today's episode, it's going to be a quick one. I will give you a very brief intro to me, but if you're interested in hearing more about me and my story and kind of how I got to this point today, that will all be in episode 2, which is live now. So go ahead and check out episode 2 if you want to learn more about me, who I am, what I do, all that good stuff. If you're listening to this podcast in the early days, you either know me from real life or you know me as Chelsea Leigh from Chelsea Leigh Jewelry. So that is my business. I have been running for about 5 years now, which is so crazy. I can't believe how quickly time has gone by. But today I want to focus more on the podcast and kind of why I decided to start a podcast and what you can expect. To kind of give you a summary, my business has been very successful, but lately I've been feeling the itch to do something a little bit more. And I wasn't exactly sure what that was, what that meant, or how to articulate that feeling. I just felt deep down that I absolutely love my job of making jewelry, but there's got to be something else for me out there. In the year 2022, that was actually the best year of my business on paper. I made more money than I ever have. I got to travel all over the country, taking my jewelry, selling it to thousands of people. And I just grew my business in so many ways. But in order to do that, I had to sacrifice a lot of my personal life. I basically was working 24/7. And that's a decision I made for myself. Like I chose to be 24/7 in my business and not pay as much attention to my personal life, but that kind of caught up with me. And by the time 2023 rolled around, I was feeling so burnt out because I wasn't paying enough attention to myself. I wasn't doing the things that I needed to stay healthy or maintain my relationships. And it just wasn't a good balance, if you will. First part of 2023, because I was so burnt out, I literally didn't work at all for like 3 months, which I don't recommend. I didn't plan on, but I just was so drained, exhausted, physically, emotionally, mentally, everything. I could not get myself to get up and do anything. And that led to a year of looking inward for me. I was really trying to find inspiration again. I was doing a lot of introspection and just trying to figure out, what do I want to do with my life? How can I sustain building a successful business, but also building a personal life that I love and I'm proud of? And I don't want this to come off as complaining or that I'm ungrateful, because I am so grateful that I get to be my own boss. Like that is something I have dreamed about for years. And I absolutely love that I'm in this position to be able to even have this dilemma in the first place. So I want to make that very clear. But I think every entrepreneur can kind of relate to this of, how do I find a balance of building my business and pursuing my dreams and my passions in my career, and also stay healthy in the gym and eating right and maintaining relationships with my friends and family and finding time for hobbies and relaxing and travel, all that kind of stuff. So essentially, I spent a lot of 2023 really diving into self development, self help, kind of personal growth type of content. If you're more entrepreneurial in spirit, that's naturally the kind of stuff you're gravitated towards. But in 2023 specifically, that was basically all I was consuming. I just needed that. I needed to listen and dive into any type of help I could get to try to help propel me forward. And podcasts are always my favorite way to consume that type of content and really even any type of content. Of course, I love Instagram and Pinterest, stuff like that. It's fun for inspiration and beautiful photos, but I just really prefer the long form type of content that podcasting provides. It allows you to get to know people on a deeper level. It allows you to learn more about subjects you're interested in, more than just a 30 to 60-second reel. So I get to the end of 2023 in December, and I am on a long drive. And basically, I just got this feeling inside of me. It was almost like the flip of a switch, just something telling me, I know what your next step is, and that's to start a podcast. And starting a podcast is something that I had thought of previously, but never took action on it because I always said to myself, what the heck would I talk about? There's no way I could do a podcast. That's just not in the cards for me. It would be cool, but probably not for me. But for whatever reason, in December, so if you're listening to this when it first airs, this is literally less than 2 months ago when I made this decision. And I just said, okay, that's it. I'm going to start a podcast. I don't know what I'm going to talk about, but it's my favorite way to consume content. So I feel like I'd be really good at hosting a podcast. I am definitely the type of person that likes to dive head first. When I have an idea, I kind of just go for it. So that is basically how I'm treating this podcast. I'm going to dive in, commit to it, see how it goes, treat it as a little bit of an experiment, see what kind of feedback I get, and treat it just as like a learning process. All right. So now that I decided I'm going to start a podcast, I needed to figure out what the heck I'm going to talk about, which is a little bit backwards. Most people would have a topic and then decide to start a podcast, but I'm just backwards, I guess. So a lot of the advice in business is to pick a niche, and a niche is a specific topic or category. So in the podcasting world, your niche is what you're going to talk about. Now, this is hard for me because, like you, I'm sure you have lots of different interests, lots of things that make you the whole picture of who you are. So it's really hard to narrow down and pick one thing. And I think we're seeing a trend more and more recently where people aren't putting themselves in a box and putting themselves in one niche. They're kind of branching out and sharing all of the things that make them a whole human and how that can kind of relate to a niche or an overarching theme for what they're trying to share. But I think we as consumers are more interested in learning all of the bits and pieces and not just this one particular topic. So when I think about this in the form of podcast and what I am drawn to, what I listen to a lot is I like listening to the self-improvement, self-development type of podcast, but they add more to it than just that. Like I love listening to women that are successful in what they do, but I like hearing everything about them that has made them that way. I like hearing about their morning routines and how that sets them up for success. And I like hearing about their daily habits or how they work out or how they manage relationships or manage their schedule, like all these different things that go into basically just being your best self and being the best version of you that you possibly can be, instead of just talking about business and how to have a great product launch and how I built a $100,000 business in 2 years. You know, that kind of stuff is great too. But I think people are becoming more interested in more of the behind the scenes stuff, if you will. So when I was thinking about that, I really resonated with that. And I feel like I have a hard time putting myself in a box, and I decided I'm just not going to. And we'll see how that goes. We'll see that where that takes me. And I know that I still need sort of an overarching theme for the podcast. So that is kind of where I'm trying to take it, is a theme of basically how can you just be the best version of you that you possibly can be? And what are all the little things that go into making you that best version of you? Becoming your best self is a journey and a process, and it's not a one size fits all or follow these 10 steps and you've made it. So that is kind of how I'm treating this podcast, is just a place where we can go on this journey together and learn and grow together. Okay, then after I decided kind of the theme for the podcast, I needed to pick a name. And anytime I need inspiration, I go straight to Pinterest. Absolutely love Pinterest. And I really love quotes. So I was scrolling on Pinterest, kind of looking at inspirational, motivational quotes. And one really popped out at me. Not necessarily the quote, but the two words in the quote. And I could not find anywhere anybody credited for saying this. So I don't have anybody to give credit for, but I will read you the quote. It goes, "Be so beautifully consumed by loving and becoming your true self that you have no energy left to compare yourself to anyone else." As you can imagine, the two words beautifully consumed really stuck out to me. I love looking up the meanings and definitions of words. So I Googled the definition of beautifully, and here's what came up for that: in a way that it excites aesthetic pleasure and in a highly effective or excellent manner. And then the definition for consumed was to have so much of a feeling that it affects everything you do, or something that spreads over or engulfs you. And I feel like the word consumed oftentimes has very negative connotations to it. We use that word to describe almost like a vice or an obsession that's unhealthy. But by putting the word beautifully in front of it, it really just completely flips the script on that and makes that obsession or that determination something that is a positive and something that is highly effective or excellent, as the definition says. It just clicked with me that I was like, wow, I really love this phrase. It really resonates with me. And I came up with my own definition for beautifully consumed. So let me read that to you. To be so wildly dedicated to finding your purpose, becoming your most true self, and living a life that is undeniably yours. And again, this just resonates with me so much because, as I mentioned earlier, I'm really an all or nothing type of person. And I think that can sometimes come to my detriment. But more often than not, I really like to describe it as my greatest strength. I think it's allowed me to grow my business. It's allowed me to learn so many new skills and just dive in without hesitation or without fear and figure it out as I go. And like I said, sometimes that can be a negative, but I choose to reframe that and look at it as a positive. So in the same way that consumed, that obsessive, all-in type of nature, something that spreads over or engulfs you, instead of looking at that as a negative, I like to look at that as a positive. So that is where the name Beautifully Consumed comes from, in case you are wondering. Let you understand the name, I just want to reemphasize that this is just going to be a space where we go on a journey together to learn and grow together. It's just going to be about finding and becoming our best selves, finding our purpose, just figuring out what the deeper meaning of life is together. How can we find joy in the little moments? All of these things are things that I want to talk about. And I want to say that I'm no expert by any means. I definitely do have stories and experiences and lessons I've learned, and I love to share those with people. So that's kind of my plan here, is to do that. And I will also have some guests on where we hear their stories. And I think everyone has a unique story to tell, and it's so cool to hear from those people and find pieces of inspiration and learn new things from different people. So I'm excited to have a mix of episodes with just me and with guests on the show as well. And I am an entrepreneur, so there definitely will be some business and entrepreneurial stuff sprinkled in here and there, because naturally that's just a big part of who I am and what I do. But I will say you don't have to be a business owner or an entrepreneur to be here and feel included in this space. That's not going to be the main focus of the podcast. But I do want to give you a heads up that there will be some stuff about business and entrepreneurship, but I will try to make it in a way that can be applied to any facet of your life. I have a quick side note, but it is related. I'll tell you how it's related in a second. So I have this book here. It's called The Well-Lived Life, and it's written by Dr. Gladys McGarey. She is referred to as the mother of holistic medicine. And she was 102 years old when she wrote this. She is just a super inspirational woman, and she has so many excellent nuggets of wisdom in this book. It's definitely something that everyone should check out at least once. If you're not into reading it, I know that it's available in audio version, and she actually has some extra snippets in there read by her that aren't in the actual book if you want to listen. But in her book, basically, she gives you her 6 secrets to living a well-lived life. And the reason I bring up this book is because her secrets aren't just eat healthy, work out, and looking at your health from that traditional sense. She really talks about the importance of community, and she talks about the importance of movement, always being a student and looking for lessons in life. She talks about gratitude. She talks about finding your purpose. This book is just so excellent because she covers every facet of life and how they all intertwine together to make you the most happy, healthy, and whole version of yourself that you possibly can be. And the reason I love this book so much, and the reason I bring this up, is because that is kind of what I want and envision for this podcast. I want it to be a place where we can learn and talk about all of these different things and how they all intermingle and work together to make you the best version of yourself. So as I mentioned, I am no expert. I just plan to get on here and talk about my journey, my experiences, and I really look forward to connecting with you too and hearing from you, answering your questions. I really value any feedback you can give me. If there's anything you're interested in learning more about or hearing about, feel free to send me a DM on Instagram at Beautifully Consumed. I would absolutely love to hear from you. And I'm just so excited to have you here and to go on this journey with you as we learn what it means to be beautifully consumed by living a life that is undeniably ours. So thanks so much for listening to the very first episode of Beautifully Consumed, and I will see you next time.